Alright, hey everybody, it's Highly an Alchemist, and welcome to my first Let's Play of The Legend of Zelda for the NES. And the Virtual Console, if you just saw that, it says that, on the logo where it says 2003. Yes, I'm playing this on the Virtual Console, for what you just saw. And as soon as we enter this cave, we just picked up a wooden sword, and now we are ready for this adventure.
Wow. Never thought I'd live to see the day that this channel would go and reach this kind of milestone for its anniversary. Also, I do have to apologize for a couple of things. I know you're seeing a bunch of lights on my glasses that's reflecting off of it. That's because I'm actually facing directly in front of the window because that's where my computer's facing at. And also there's these blue lights. It's either the transitional lenses on my glasses or it could be just my webcam that's doing this because it's showing blue lights on it right here. So yeah, I apologize for how absolutely shit quality that it's at right now though, and why my face doesn't look all that great because of how grainy the texture might look. But hopefully I should get myself a new camera or something like that though, and should be like a higher quality. You should see like some kind of a better image quality or picture image and all that here. So at the very least, if you guys just bear with me on this one here. But yeah, so now this channel has reached its 10-year anniversary, and I remember, back then that I actually first started this kind of channel when I did my very first Let's Play on this one of Zelda 1 for the NES. And I know I actually poked fun at my voice for sounding like, I'm still in my teenage years, even though at the time I was 20 years old when I first started this. And now here I am as a 30-year-old man who's just freshly turned 30. Yes, happy birthday to me, even though it's kind of a little belated at this point. And well, I guess I've kind of seemed to have come pretty far when it comes to that as well. Also, as you can see here, my background looks a little different because I did mention that like during my Super Mario Sunshine Let's Play, when I was collecting those goddamn blue coins, that I did move to a new place, and so this is actually what you're seeing right now. So that's why it's looking a little different. But it's definitely bigger space too. You can see that I finally have a dining room over there with a dining room table because my last apartment didn't have that. I'll tell you this right now, my last apartment sucked. But I wanted to look back and reflect on exactly how I started this whole thing, and what inspired me to actually do these kind of let's plays to begin with, or just going on with this channel here. So let's get started, shall we? Now, I know it's been so long though that a lot of guys probably remember that it was way back in 2016, when I first started this channel, and now there were actually the first couple of videos though. Actually, as a matter of fact. I guess it wouldn't be accurate to say that this channel reached the 10th anniversary because because I first started these Let's Plays back on May 19th of 2016, but I actually officially first started the channel back before then. It was back in February 2016 when I opened this one up here. So I guess maybe I should have done this kind of reflection video back in February, but I don't know. I figure I'd just find a kind of good time since I would officially I haven't really done anything special for this channel though. Like if you actually look back at my first couple of videos, there are actually two videos that I started off with that wasn't really Let's Plays though. First one was when I was doing a test run of my Hot Pot capture device because I had bought the thing not too long prior to that, and I tested it on Shovel Knight. Yeah, I was doing Shovel Knight on the Wii U because I had that one downloaded though, and because I heard so many good things about it though, and I wanted to try it myself. I still didn't beat the game though, and still to this day I haven't. But I wanted to do a little test run of that one though, just show some kind of gameplay footage on Shovel Knight itself. And then the second one was when I was doing my own level creation in Super Mario Maker, the first one for the Wii U. I mean, it was still around the time, and so I think it was kind of like I think it was that one level that I made where it goes by two difficulties where it was actually just a very short, very like painfully easy kind of route that you have to do, and then the other one where you go down the warp pipe was hellishly difficult, and I did a lot of trollish and dickish moments on there, so it's kind of like a bit like a Kaizo. Well, I'm not sure if I would actually call it like Kaizo. I mean, it had to be way more than that, way more of a difficulty to even be considered a Kaizo level. But I guess it was kind of like lost levels and all that too. So so yeah, I want to get into that I was actually talking about some instances where you know it was when I actually when I started my first Let's Play of Zelda 1 for the NES, and I'm not sure if you guys actually remember what I said because I know it's been so long since then, but I actually did mention something about me having a another channel before this one that I'm currently at right now that's no longer around and no longer exists. And well, I'm actually not shitting you here, guys. I actually was serious when I did say this. Yes, it is true. I did have another channel beforehand. It was actually supposed to be my early starts for when I was doing that sort of a thing I was doing with Let's Plays, and it was also the same thing as well, where I was also doing Let's Plays. Now I don't know if I even want to mention what the name of my channel was though, unless you guys are really curious. Maybe some of you guys might recognize me from the other channel, even though it has been so long though, and I kind of did a little bit of a fresh start as well. So I mean, if you guys kind of still remember that though. But I will make this one thing clear, and one thing about it only is that I actually hated my old channel. And there's actually like many reasons for that as well. So, my old channel that I used to do, I did the same thing where I did Let's Plays, except that unlike this channel where I did post commentary, it was all live commentary. And I will definitely get into why I want nothing more to do with that channel anymore, and why I was looking back and it was it wasn't so great though. So I first started that channel way back when. It was like a long, long time ago. In fact, I would say back in 2009. Yeah, not even kidding, back in 2009, and that was actually back when the whole Let's Play moniker was it was very popular at the time. Everybody was doing that sort of thing. Because I know actually first started, I think it was on the Something Awful forums where the whole Let's Play thing was kind of going about it. And so back in 2009, well, I was 13 years old at the time, and I was going through puberty. I was still going to school. I was in middle school when I was doing that sort of thing, and I was watching some Let's Players. I was watching Dark Minded Sith being that one prime example, and one of my biggest inspirations for doing for me wanting to do Let's Plays. I was watching his videos, and I was so entertained about it all. Like he was very funny. He's great at what he does, and he actually made the whole thing while informative, but also humorous at the same time. And I really enjoyed it so much so, and I became so heavily inspired by what he was doing, and so I figured, oh hey, I want to do the same thing as well. Like, and I kind of want to do my own kind of Let's Plays. So I went ahead and bought myself a video recorder. It was actually a regular camera. I didn't really have any other fancy equipment like Dazzle and whatnot. So I got this one video camera from back in my local Best Buy. Well, back then it was actually my local Best Buy at the time, back when I was living in Central Florida. But I bought that one and I started doing those Let's Plays. And well, I did like multiple fresh starts afterwards as well, though, because I was because I didn't really have a Dazzle at the time. I didn't know much of what people were using. I mean, they were using emulators and all that, and they were using these screen recordings for those, but I didn't know a goddamn thing about emulators at the time. I was very much at a new level, so what I did was that I just I got a camera and a tripod, and I placed it right in front of the TV, and then that's when I started recording, and I just hope for the best. It kind of was a bit of a shit quality as well, but that was all I had at the time because I was well, I mean, I had to rely on my parents for all that as well, and so I just record all that, and I did my Let's Plays on there, and well, I mean, that's kind of thing with the whole do video recordings in front of TVs where you can actually see the person in the TV itself, kind of a reflection. But of course, it was around the time, I was doing more of those, but um, that was around that time though. I was actually starting to hear about people using the Dazzle or emulators and all that though. But I was actually kind of wanting to use the Dazzle because I mean well again I didn't know much about having to use emulators and all that. That was actually before I started learning about them, like learning to download emulators or using some screen recordings. But I went for a Dazzle afterwards, and then I started using some recording stuff like Pinnacle Studio, and there was also Windows Movie Maker that I was using as well. So and so I was using that at the time as well. But I do want to say though, like I'm gonna go ahead and stop myself right there though, because I do want to say that looking back on that other channel that I did, and and I'm sure maybe a lot of you guys are very much curious at this point though. I don't know if well, I don't even have those videos saved anymore because I deleted them all. Because I'm just gonna say this one thing very clearly. I I did not enjoy how I actually hate how the videos turned out. I still do to this day. And the reason being is because, again, that was back when I was a teenager and I was immature. I, I didn't really know much any better. My humor was very much abysmal, I will say, in my opinion. I mean, not a lot of those people actually at the time, but I had like abysmal humor. It was super cringe, and looking back, I was like, oh God, I can't believe I did all those, and it's just it was just painful to listen to. And so I was actually still going at it with with those let's plays at the time, and it was through. I would say from then until 2016, and that was at the time I realized, you know what? I don't know if I even want to do this anymore though. And another thing about it is that you know it's kind of hard at the same time because for one thing I was actually starting to get to where I like to be informative while also playing the game at the same time, but it's kind of getting hard to do because there were times where I was just standing in one place while I was playing the game, but I was actually explaining things, but I didn't really continue moving. I was just like standing in one spot, and it took me forever to move, and of course I was looking back at it and I was like. No, like I was. There were times where I was watching the videos myself, and I was actually yelling at my past self. I was like, okay, dude, get a move on. You're wasting time here. Like, why are you still standing here? You gotta get a move on. Like, get on with the game. And I was just still standing here. So, but yeah, those a couple things. It was getting to the point where yeah, what, I'm not sure if I even want to do this anymore. And so, I ended up deleting that channel. And part of it is because because of the fact that I really was not satisfied. I didn't like the way that the videos were. But also, aside from the fact that just looking back about about how my humor was and what I was like when I was a teenager, where it was very cringe, and I was doing some very questionable things that I am not proud of at all, and I was very ashamed about. And to those of you guys who might be watching this, I probably still remember that of the channel, and and probably still remember all those stuff there, and if they're like stuff that just wasn't very good. I do want to take the time to apologize for all that, because I mean, if I was if I was at this mindset, where I'm at right now, then I wouldn't really be doing all those, and I wouldn't really make this kind of like cringe humor and all that, or some very questionable decisions I would do from back in the day, and this is something that I look back and I am not proud of and never will be, and and that's one of the biggest reasons why I didn't want those to be on YouTube because I just it just wasn't worth it at all. Like I ended up being ashamed of what it was back then though, and honestly, I'm glad I got started in the whole Let's Play field, where I got inspired by, a lot of other people who were doing that kind of stuff, though. And, it was something that, I just wanted to enjoy doing. But the end result of all of that, the way my commentary was, where it was very cringe. And, it was at a time that I had not reached the emotional maturity because, when you're a teenager, like, sometimes they're like the immature ones. I mean, not the extreme extent of some certain teenagers I would know of that would actually, the little shits that could be though. But there were my own kind of share of problems, and that's something that I am not proud of to this day, and I never can be though. So if you guys still remember that and remember how bad I was back then I do sincerely apologize, and I sometimes I really do wish I could change all that, and that's something that I really was ashamed about. And and again, if I was at the mindset, then I wouldn't really do all those in the first place. And it's also one of those things where I feel like that actually started my Let's Plays way too early of an age because I did mention that I was 13 years old at the time. That's like way too young and way too much of an immature mindset to actually do all those. And there were times where there might have been some incidents I kind of got into as well that I didn't want to go too much into full detail about it because it's something that I don't really like to talk about because it was out of regret and all that. And honestly though, I actually kind of wish I would have waited until I turned 18 years old, maybe 16 or something like that, maybe 16, but for the most part 18 though. But that was only because I actually want to do those let's plays. When I was seeing the likes of Dark Minded Sith or Nintendo Capri Sun or Chugga Conroy, and it was one of those things where where I was actually wanting to do this myself though, but it wasn't at the right time though because it was at the time where they were actually a few years older than me, and well, especially in Nintendo Capri Sun's case where he was already a grown adult at the time, and of course there are just some times where I wish I would have waited until I was older to do those sort of things, and to the point where I actually learn a lot more, get more knowledge, and actually change a lot more and all that. So that's just one of those things where I just kind of regret some. At the same time though, just looking back on those and and seeing moving on from past experience and seeing all the stuff that I wish I would have done a little better of. At least at the very same time, it actually did change me quite a bit, and it actually helped me to become the person that I am now because I've changed a lot, and I definitely got more development in myself, and so I was getting to the point where I was able to start doing my own kind of thing, and so that's what led me to seeing back on this channel. That's why I decided to just go ahead and delete altogether. And so I went ahead and did a second channel, and at the time I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with the second channel, but I also realized that I still like to do these let's plays, and I like to be informative at the same time. So that's actually what led me to actually start over from scratch, even though I wanted to start over from all the subscribers and all that, and just starting all that from zero. But I also like to be informative at the same time, so that's what led me to actually do these post-commentator Let's Plays where, I would just record the whole gameplay footage because I know that if I was doing this live, well, I know I did say that I was going to be doing live streams and all that, so I would probably be doing the same as well, but maybe not so much, though, because it would just be me, just playing the game and, showing my reactions. But when it comes to doing my own kind of Let's Plays and my own kind of style, where I would actually just be able to record my gameplay footage and then just, commentate over the same time, where, I would, make sure I would try to be humorous at the same time though, but also just be more myself, be more engaging and all that, engage with my audience, and, be informative, some aspects about some games I'm playing, what you do in some situations, or especially when it comes to boss fights or some certain missions in some games as well. And, it could be some games I either love or hate, or just at the very least indifferent to. But it's something that I just want to do. Just kind of inform you guys, and just more so for my audience, and it's something I like to do. More kind of a natural mindset of what I want to do with my Let's Plays in general, my own kind of style of Let's Plays. And I try to make sure that I don't want to make things too boring at the very least because I know there are some Let's Players that would actually be all monotone. They're not quite into it though, but at the same time, I just want to be like make sure that's filled with information, and where it could be a bit of an info dump. But at the same time, just try to do my own kind of a style of humor to make it so that where I just do some moments or some or maybe some skits at the very least, and to at least make this some kind of form of entertainment or something like that. Now, granted, I know for one thing that since we're in the year of 2026, and the whole Let's Play format has kind of stagnated somewhat, though. But at the same time, I know there are some people out there that are actually still doing Let's Plays. Maybe some minor channels. Hell, I mean, even Chugga Conroy is actually still doing Let's Plays himself, though, and he's still popular to this day. And of course, so is Nintendo Capri Sun. And also the Super Gamer Brothers, as they're still doing their Let's Plays as well. And of course, I know for one thing when it comes to my own channel that mine also seems to have stagnated as well. I'm not really popular per se, even though going on 10 years and I have about 125 subscribers. But I will say this much now that going back when I was actually first starting, I only had Coming up to about 20 subscribers, but in a few years, I actually did manage to make it up to 100 subscribers and going 125 subscribers. So that's actually goes shown at the very least, though, but not by much because I'm not very popular. I'm not really getting as many right then and there, though. I guess it's all just a matter of just keeping this channel active and to just keep with uploading, and then maybe I'll actually get somewhere though. But I don't know. Maybe if I like, I should probably do more with the channel. But I'll just think about it at the very least, like maybe show some support and all that with some other links and something like that though. I don't know, maybe. But at the same time, I mean, I'm actually I'm actually kind of proud of how far I came at the very least, even though it's still kind of like small potatoes compared to everybody else. But I don't know. I mean, you may never know. We'll see. Again, I know there are still people out there that are still doing this kind of stuff. Now, I know for one thing that people are actually doing some live streams or just streaming on YouTube or Twitch and all that, or they would just do these long play videos. And of course, long play videos are actually something that I don't really like doing. I just like to have them segmented. Maybe do like either 20 minutes or maybe a half hour. It could be hour long or something like that though. Depends on the whole kind of time frame and all that, or the length of the videos themselves. But I think live streaming would actually be something that I have thought about for a long time. I actually did do my live streams of Super Mario 64 DS, which I haven't gone back to it though, and I don't think I've ever planned to anytime soon because, well, let's be real, it's not great. And I'm not liking it either. But at the same time, I am actually interested in just trying to open up my Twitch channel and actually do live streams there. So I still want to try that at the very least. So, maybe see where I can go from here. But at this moment, it's actually something that that maybe I actually still want to keep doing, and I'm actually still pretty satisfied with what I'm doing so far though, because it's something I just want to keep on doing as well. And I don't know if I maybe make a career out of it though, but but since it's kind of stagnant at this point though, then maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it probably wouldn't really take me anywhere though. So maybe I could try for something else. So like live streaming would actually be an option at the same time because it's definitely the more popular thing. But maybe at the same time I could just keep doing what I'm doing, and then maybe something happens. I don't know. We'll see about that. So this pretty much covers it for the entirety of my channel. What my channel was about, and what my other channel was like. So let's go ahead and dive back into what about the Let's Plays themselves, and just going back into a reflection on when I first started those Let's Plays, the first few of them, starting with my first one, which was Zelda 1 for the NES, and of course it was actually back during the time when my channel used to be called Highly an Alchemist, because it was I couldn't really think of any other kind of original names for that as well, so I just kind of just went with it. So one of the reasons that I wanted to start off with the first Legend of Zelda game, and to have it as my first Let's Play. Now, to those of you who may not be aware at this point, and in case it wasn't obvious enough, I'm actually wearing the shirt right here. I am a diehard fan of the Legend of Zelda. I love the series so much. It is one of my absolute favorite video game series of all time. The adventurous feel and all that, and the great plot lines and the whole characterization. And and also the puzzles and all the dungeons and all that, and the whole exploration, everything that goes about it, it's really unique in its own way, and and it really does give you the feeling that Nintendo was very passionate about those kind of games, and it feels so much fun because of it, and it's such a great time to get into those, and with everything, and also and the lore and all that, just learning about about how lore heavy it is. Even though the timeline itself can be an absolute mess and all that, though, but that's actually what makes it so interesting. That whenever you see Hyrule and how much times have changed, and everything has done with all its history and all that, and it just feels so interesting. It gives you some kind of emotional feel, and that's what Zelda does such a good job at. And that's actually what really one of among the many things that made me fall in love with the franchise. And of course, there's actually the one kind of other game that I'll talk about that actually what kickstarted the whole thing. But of course, going back into Zelda 1. So I actually started that one though, and I know it's very guide heavy because I was definitely looking at Zelda Dungeon for to make sure that I wouldn't actually get myself lost. But yeah, that's actually what makes Zelda so funny. You can actually just get lost in the whole thing. Am I right? But if you do want to go through the whole entirety of Zelda 1, then you do want to make sure you have a map on standby and also the whole guide as well. And so going back for the next few Let's Plays I did as well. The next one I did was Super Mario 64. I actually jumped straight ahead to that game instead of doing the other Super Mario Brothers games before then. Of course, I did have the marathon to actually compensate for all that as well. But I was doing the next one though because Super Mario 64 is actually one of the games I grew up with because being an N64 kid and all that. And so, I know it was actually one of those Let's Plays that was very heavily Let's Played on, but I didn't really care. And I actually still don't to this day, so I actually want to do my own kind of thing about it as well. But, again, I was also playing this on the Virtual Console because my old N64 was kind of, it wasn't doing very well. It wasn't really running the games properly as well. So, I wasn't really able to play that game or play it on the console without anything glitching out because it was pretty glitchy and all that. So I mean, I don't know what was going on with it and all that. So so I had to make sure that I just wanted to go ahead and just play it on the Virtual Console on the Wii U and just kind of a hope for the best. Now I do want to say this one thing that despite the fact that I was using my hot hog to record all this. I didn't have a job at the time. I was actually still going to one of those technical schools at the time. I was actually I didn't really have I didn't really have Adobe Premiere or Sony Vegas. So at the time I was a broke son of a bitch. So I still ended up using Windows Movie Maker, even though it was sorely outdated at that point. And I honestly shouldn't be using that because I mean nobody else is using that anymore. But I was actually still using that, and I wish I would have been using the other recording software, editing software, but it was just all I had at the time because I didn't have a job and I was still broke at the time, so that was just all I could use, and my editing style was just very limited. And so just going back, and I was like, wow, it was the year of 2016, and you're still using Windows Movie Maker, like what the fuck? So yeah, I guess I kind of don't blame you guys if you actually thought of that. I was thinking about that as well, and I just wish I had some better ones as well. But at the very least, a few Let's Plays later, when I got to Sonic Adventure, and well, they're in the middle of it. That was when I finally started using Adobe Premiere because it was about damn time that I actually started using that, and so that was when I was actually learning more about the bells and whistles of Adobe Premiere, and I was playing around with some new editing tools, and so that was when my video editing style was starting to improve for sure. Now, of course, going back, I know it's still one of those things where even though I actually had a new approach to my own kind of Let's Play style going to this new channel, and sometimes I would actually still look back, and my voice was still a little higher pitched, and my commentary was slower, where I was speaking a little more slowly, and I actually still was making some comments on some things where looking back on it now, it was cringe. It was pretty cringy and all that stuff. And of course, and I was going back and I was going like, wow, I can't believe I actually pulled that out of my ass and just said that like completely out of nowhere. But that's actually something that everybody goes through at some point or another, where they take a look back, they take a look back at their old Let's Plays or their old videos, when they were younger than they were now, and they would absolutely cringe at what they were like back then. And, it was kind of the same with me. So my old style Let's Plays where it was very much different from how it is how it is today, and it's it was actually kind of a slower pace as well. But of course, going back to some of the other Let's Plays I was actually going through as well. So yeah, I was actually kind of randomizing myself on the Let's Plays I was doing. After Super Mario 64, then I was doing Kirby 64, also on the Wii U Virtual Console. And then after that, then of course I was doing my Let's Play of Pokemon Red version, which was a Generation 1 that I was doing as well. Now I will say this one thing, that I was trying to use my Hot Pocket as well, but what I did was that I still had my copy of Pokemon Red, and I put it into the Game Boy player on my Nintendo GameCube, and so that was kind of the reason why you were seeing the whole banner and all that as well. But at the time, I was trying to use my Hop Hog, and I thought the image quality was so low. Like, everything on there was just, it was just very blurry. And I thought maybe that's not going to be so good. So I went ahead and just used my Dazzle on this, on my Pokemon Red Let's Play. And I was gonna like, oh, okay, Tyler, what are you doing? Why are you going back to using that dazzle, even though this is actually something that nobody's using anymore? Well, it's because I just kind of thought that maybe the quality looked a little better on there, and so maybe it was actually easier to handle. But nowadays, I actually started using my hop hog on my on these non-HD consoles, and I at the very least just increase the sharpness on those videos with Adobe Premiere. But yeah, at the time I was still using the Dazzle, so it was very much screamed 2008 or 2009 YouTube doing those. But maybe some people actually appreciate it enough because it's like they're going back to the past and just gonna kind of see um what YouTube was like back during the early 2010s and all that. So it's kind of just going back in time for that as well. But at the very least, a part of it was kind of justified because again I still didn't have a job and I was still kind of broke. So that was just that was kind of like all I had to do. It was my kind of technology at the time was pretty limited because it just felt outdated as well. And then afterwards, that was actually when I finished my Pokemon Red Let's Play, and there have been quite a few hiatuses as well, here and there. But I think the whole hiatus thing, I was where my channel was kind of stagnating. It was when I started doing my Let's Play of A Link to the Past, and and I was actually trying to make some good progress on that as well. But that was actually where my channel scheduling was kind of starting to go down because I was going through my dark times. I was going through basically the dark age of my life where my well, I was having family members where my parents were kind of they were being very strict and they were, well, things were actually getting pretty controlling for me, and I was going through I was very miserable all the time. I was going through a depression and all that because it was really it was not being very good for me mentally speaking. It was very much affecting my mental health because of all that. And so because of that, I was not motivated at all to do any of those let's plays because of it. And so because of that, it was also the time when I was struggling to get myself a job because that was what I was being pressured about. And so because of that, I had to focus on that first. I had to go and focus on getting myself a job and start making money and all that. And of course, let's just say it took until 2019 when I actually finally got a job. But I mean, I was able to finish my Let's Play Link to the Past because it needed to be done because I've been delaying it so much, and I really wanted to finish that Let's Play because it's been going around so long. But that was at the time when I finally got myself a job in 2019. My very first job, and so I finally got back into video making on a regular basis. And then that was when I was doing my Let's Play of Sonic Adventure. And then it was around the time things were starting to improve for me that I started to sign up for an Adobe subscription. So I downloaded Adobe Premiere, and I did the whole monthly payment because I know just buying the whole package it was it was very expensive unless you get yourself the unless you do a student version where you get a student discount. But I went for a whole monthly payment subscription since seeing that I finally have a job and all that. And so I was able to improve myself with doing the with using Adobe Premiere and finally moving on from Windows Movie Maker, and I was so happy about that as well. But then that was when all of a sudden when my parents suddenly decided to move to Georgia, or the southern part of Georgia. And so I was wanting to avoid all that because when I saw the house, and I hated how it was because it was it was literally in the middle of nowhere. So I was trying to make sure to avoid all that and to try to move to my place, or move into my own place. But that ended up falling flat on its face, and so I was forced to move with him anyway. And so that was where I started continuing from doing my Let's Plays, my Let's Plays there. And so after I got done with Sonic Adventure, then that was when I started doing my Let's Play Banjo-Kazooie. And so that was actually at the time, I wanted to do that as a celebration of when Banjo-Kazooie finally made it into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and they were such happy times for us Banjo-Kazooie fans, especially since it had been so long since we last saw them in action. After the whole flop with Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts for the Xbox 360. And, especially considering the fact that, with Banjo-Kazooie finally returning to a Nintendo console, since after Rare had been bought out by Microsoft, and they were all like going to Xbox exclusives and all that, and and it felt like that it just wasn't the same without them. But then when they finally returned to a Nintendo console, in this case being the Nintendo Switch on a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and it's definitely the most heartwarming trailer that there ever was. Where all the Nintendo characters were they were cheering, they were celebrating, seeing their return. Like they miss him so much, and especially in the case with Donkey Kong, because since his country titles, they were being developed by Rare, and that's why they made the whole trailer with Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, and hell, even King K. Rool. They were all there, and then they saw Banjo Kazooie actually finally returning in front of them, and they were so overjoyed about all that, and that was like the most heartwarming thing I've ever seen. I was overjoyed by that as well. Like my inner child came out because I grew up with those games. I grew up with Banjo Kazooie and Banjo Tooie. They were definitely a big part of my childhood, and I was so thrilled, so overjoyed about it as well. I fell out of my chair when I saw the trailer, and I was so happy about it. It really felt like I was a kid again. I was back to being 9 years old. And so, even though it was a few months late, but I figured better late than never. And so I started, when I was doing Let's Play Banjo Kazooie, as a whole celebration and all that. And of course, while I was doing the Let's Play, that was when the COVID-19 pandemic started, and we all had to be quarantined, and we had to, all of us had to wear a mask when we had to go out and all that. So it was something. I will say that much though. And then afterwards, after that was done, that was when I started doing my Let's Play of Paper Mario, the first Paper Mario for the N64. But when I thought I had a bit of a good start, that was actually when things kind of got worse for me, because I was doing so many hiatus as well. And to actually give a good example, to actually jump the gun ahead a bit here, I first started doing the Let's Play Paper Mario in starting with the summer of 2020. But I ended the whole Let's Play at the summer of 2022. So that took like a whole 2 years for the Let's Play being done. And the reason for that is because, well, I was suffering so badly from, for one thing, from depression, but that was also when things were going so well in my life. I was having, both my parents, I was having issues with them, and, they were being a lot more controlling. They were going through that kind of phase as well, and it was not good for my mental health at all. Now, normally I don't really like to talk much about my families and all that though, but I kind of want to be honest and open with what I was going through. So it was things were going so badly for me in my life. I wasn't happy with what's going on, and not only that, but I was actually working my job with Publix at the time, and normally the work wouldn't really be so bad though, but I actually had so much trouble fitting in and all that. It really felt like I was an alien to everybody. Like even though I was just being my usual self and all that, but it was actually the time when I moved away from all my friends. I had to move somewhere else where there was people I actually haven't really met at all. But I had a lot of trouble fitting in. Everybody there was being very cliquey, and actually, as a matter of fact, even though I actually did make friends, though, I ended up making the wrong friends, and that also really affected me mentally as well. And because of that, I ended up taking a very long hiatus, and took so many breaks because of it. And so eventually I got back to doing Paper Mario, but then I took myself another hiatus because I found a place to move to, and I moved back to Central Florida, and so I had to delay the Let's Play because I had to focus on getting myself packed up and ready to go and ready to move back to Central Florida. And so when I moved out of my parents' house back over there, and so when I moved back to Central Florida, moved out of my parents' house, then I was able to find the motivation to continue doing Let's Plays, and so I was able to finish with Paper Mario as well. And also, well, of course, I was actually still going through depression because there have been other factors that's been going through, and I had a lot of troubles with me as well, and of course I was having a bit of a miserable time as well. Now, of course, I do apologize. I didn't mean for this whole thing to make this whole thing quite a bit of a depressed fest and all that. But ever since then, I had to I had to keep going and all that. And so I finally got all of that taken care of, and then but even then, I really had to try to motivate myself to to keep going. I really can't really be living in the shadows so long. I had to just keep doing what I'm doing right now. And so after I finally got my Let's Play Paper Mario done and over with, that was when I decided that you know what, I think this channel might need a better name and all that, because I want to see if I can include my name in the channel, kind of like do a whole rebranding. And so I had to figure out what kind of what I want to do, like what I want to name my channel. And so I had to go through whatever kind of names there was, though. I had to use some kind of adjective before my name. And it was hard to do because what I would do is that when I thought of something, I had to do a Google search and see if somebody else already took it, because I didn't want to do any copyright infringements. And I would see that that people have already taken those names. So I actually thought of like some kind of other name. Like I was going through like AcedTyler, and so I was like, did somebody else already take that? So I did a Google search, and I saw that there were no results. Like there was nobody ever took the name and all that. So I was like, okay, AcedTyler it is then. So that's when I did a whole name change for the channel. So I decided to go for all that. Kind of go for something that's a little more original. And actually started all that, starting with my Let's Play of Link's Awakening. And so that pretty much kind of where it went from there. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be doing the whole thing again, though, like maybe change it again, though. But I think I'll pretty much just stick with it for now, at the very least. So after like 2 years of living back in Central Florida, the rent prices were kind of increasing. So it was actually at the time when I had no choice but to move back to my parents' house and just save up some money and try to get back on my feet. And then I had to go and find some affordable places to live in North Florida. Well, right now I'm living in Jacksonville. I know I probably shouldn't say the name of the city of where I'm located, though. But then again, Jacksonville is a huge city, and it's very huge. There's a lot of places around here and there. You'll never find me here. Never. But that's where I'm at right now, and so now I was able to save a lot of money, and so now I got my own place and all that, and so I got my own kind of apartment that I'm living at right now, and so things are going pretty smoothly, and so I'm actually getting a lot better right now, though. So I'm actually making sure to improve myself and just take better care of my mental health and all that. And so just continue doing what I do, and just if I actually enjoy this whole kind of thing, then I think these would be okay for me. So going forward, and just seeing the whole the future of this channel, and to see the whole conclusion and end results and all that. So and like I said, I just go back to my old Let's Plays. I do cringe a lot of the times, though, but at least it actually helped me to, shape up to, the kind of person that I am now. And, going forward for the future of, for this whole channel, I'm pretty much, happy where I'm at right now. And, even though it's kind of like, my channel is still very small and, not very well noticed. But at the same time, though, I do want to keep on doing what I'm doing at the very least. But also, I did mention that there were some of the things I also want to do as well, like, and support the channel. Like, I did say something about opening up a Twitch channel to do some live streams. And that's actually something I'm still interested in doing. And that, maybe if I actually get, the right equipment. Actually, as a matter of fact, I do want to get myself a new computer, because I think it might be about time to upgrade for a new one. But maybe what I can do is that, if I open up a Twitch channel, I actually start doing my live streams, and maybe I'll actually see where I'm going from here. So that's actually the one thing that I actually could be doing, going forward for this channel. That I can actually just maybe find some kind of a succession, or just maybe actually just be able to do more for the channel, and just overall, and maybe I'll just see where I can go from there. And I think that's pretty much all I want to say about, just doing a whole reflection on, with a 10-year anniversary and all that right here. Actually, to mention for the fact that I didn't really do a 5-year anniversary of my channel back in 2021, that was also because, at the time I was still going through depression, and I was, not very motivated at all, and I didn't really think about it at all. I was going through a hiatus. So that's actually the one reason why. But at least I'm actually doing this 10-year anniversary as well, so there's that. So at least I was able to do that. And I think that pretty much covers the whole reflection for this whole channel. And just going forward with all things. And I do want to thank you guys for, for your whole support for the channel, and I know I don't really have as many fans, but for those fans that are watching right now, those people, and, I know a lot of guys actually, have been supportive of the channel, and, with what I do. And I really do want to thank you guys for, for everything that, for, supporting me and all that. And, it really, it really does make me happy that, that you guys are there too, with all the whole support, even during those, like, good times and bad times and all that. But there's one thing I really do appreciate the most is that, you guys, you guys would actually help to motivate me and, to, inspire me and all that. And, it's been a good and fantastic ride. And, I'll still continue to do what I want to do as well, just going forward. And, and I really do appreciate that, I really do appreciate that you guys are, just there to, encourage me, just say, just keep doing what I do. And, it's a really great motivator. So thank you guys. It really means a lot to me. It really does. And with that said, maybe things will actually do good, because I know there's been quite a few Let's Plays I've done that actually turned out to be really popular, like, Diddy Kong Racing. Some videos from my Pokemon Crystal Let's Play were pretty popular as well, especially the finale when I was doing the final battle against Red. And also my very well received Super Mario Brothers Super Marathon. There was also, some videos of Banjo-Tooie that I did as well that you guys really enjoyed, and, I really am thankful for all that as well. So, but yeah, I think that's pretty much all I can say about, the whole reflection and all that for this channel. And I hope you guys look forward to, doing more what I would do. Tomorrow I'm going to make the announcement for my next project, which is going to be a second marathon project. So I hope you guys look forward to that as well. And so, yeah, so thank you guys so much for tuning in and for taking the time to, doing a whole reflection on what I've done for the Let's Plays by far. And I hope you guys stay tuned for what I'll have in store for you guys. So thank you guys so much, and hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And I will see you guys next time.